I'm Nick Hughes, and this is Founders Live Conversations.
Group conversation. Depending on how many flow in here, but really excited to have Jaden in here from Netcapital. And as we get going, well, actually Stephanie's in here. Stephanie, feel free to say hi if you would like. If not, that's totally cool as well as we get going. But yeah, say hi.
I'm Stephanie.
All right. Nice to see you. Nice to have you in here. And we open this up for a room to really just talk about some thoughts and ideas around fundraising. This is really a combination, conversation in office hours with Netcapital. I'll share some more information in the chat, but I want to bring in Jaden from Netcapital. And Jaden, introduce yourself and just provide a bit of maybe just initial introduction of yourself. And then, in a few more minutes, we'll kind of get into maybe having you just talk a little bit about Netcapital and really where Netcapital sits in the ecosystem of opportunities where you would, or why someone or a startup would want to utilize Netcapital for their next raise. But just introduce yourself.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks for having me, as always. Always a pleasure. My name is Jaden Broder. I do issuer growth with Netcapital. I've been here for, I want to say April is actually the 2-year mark exactly. I started with Netcapital. I first came across Netcapital when I was making my way through undergrad at UConn in Connecticut, sort of just figuring out what I wanted to do, in my last summer going into my final year of undergrad, and then hopefully get a better understanding of what I wanted to do moving forward. And I had always been really interested in startups and the concept of building businesses from the idea stage all the way into these, world-changing organizations. And the concept of investing in companies at a very early stage was also very interesting to me. And so I learned more about the venture capital ecosystem and just got really interested in it. And I think the two big things that really rubbed me the wrong way were the fact that, one, getting involved in venture capital for someone who didn't come from a family of wealth or prestige or graduated from an Ivy League institution, it was next to impossible. There was just no way a student like me coming from UConn without any connections to like any bigwigs or super wealthy people, there's no way for me to break into the ecosystem. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the way it was structured. I also didn't like how I learned that, my interests in college were maybe not quite the same as like the common college student, but like I was very interested in just like learning about startups and like reading portfolio pages on venture capital firm websites, and like just going on like accelerator pages like Mass Challenge or Y Combinator or Techstars, just reading about different startups that were being built and just trying to learn, like, if I wanted to invest in them, how would I go about doing that? And I learned that traditionally investing in startups or private companies in general was forbidden for people who weren't accredited investors. And so again, I didn't come from a family of great wealth or prestige. And so I didn't like that. I didn't like how 97% of the population that wasn't already a millionaire didn't have access to investing in companies they believed in at a really early stage, where all of the opportunity was to be had. They can only invest in companies when they go public. But at that point, like, you have companies like Uber going public at a $60 billion valuation, or Coinbase today doing the direct listing and opening trading at a $100 billion valuation. It's not the same as investing at a company like Netflix. When they went public in 2002, you could invest in them when they were valued at $300 million. So the opportunity there for the general public isn't the same. And so anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but those two things rubbed me the wrong way. I really didn't like that. And so as I became more knowledgeable about the ecosystem, I learned about this new regulation, or this new type of securities offering called Reg CF, which are what all of the offerings that we do at Netcapital are, and all of our competitors. It stands for Regulation Crowdfunding. And what was so interesting about Reg CF securities offerings was that it removed the restrictions on who is allowed to invest in these companies. So when a company raises through a Reg CF offering, they don't have to worry about whether or not their investors are accredited. Anyone is legally able to get involved. So whether it's friends and family or employees or customers, coworkers, colleagues, fans, followers, users, literally anyone in the world can invest in these companies when they're raising through Reg CF offering. And so it just made so much sense. I thought it was a brilliant concept and was going to change the shape of the way, or change the landscape of the way early stage companies raise and access capital. I mean, that was two and a half years ago now that I first learned about this. And my thesis has been correct. Like, we're seeing tremendous growth and it's been awesome. But yeah, I mean, that's how I learned about the space, and it's why I took such a great interest in it. And then when I came across Netcapital, I just knew like I wanted to get involved. And so I was finishing up undergrad, just reached out, offered to work an unpaid internship for the summer, just to get my foot in the door, and worked my butt off. And that was 2 years ago. And now here I am, and leading issuer growth for Netcapital.
Awesome. Great story. And, I will mention in the comments in the chat, I've noted here, hey, everyone, this is a group conversation. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments on anything about, fundraising, you're thinking about it, what directions, ways to reach out to investors, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk. We are going to, what I will ask, Jaden here, just a little bit more around Netcapital. So we'll talk about that. But we want to also touch on, what Jaden is mentioning. Part of what he was mentioning was, when the fact of what I would just simply call capitalistic equality, or what we're starting to determine in terms of Founders Live is entrepreneurial equality. But when you think about just simply investing, there's the SEC regulation that was put in place in the 30s, by the way, really put hurdles in place for quite a few people globally, but especially in the United States. There was regulations on specifically how much net worth you had to even actually participate in specific investment rounds for early stage companies. I have felt the same way, and part of creating Founders Live is to lower those barriers, not only for entrepreneurship, but as you will see future directions with Founders Live, is we are starting to bring in the investment community. And it would be, I'm definitely on the side of, I think everyone around the world, no matter what level of wealth or net worth they have, they should be able to participate in a very safe and protected way to invest in early stage companies and have an upside and enjoy that. Just as they can go to Vegas and drop $50,000 on one weekend and maybe walk away with losses, why can't you at least add value to a company and actually take part in the capitalistic aspect of what we're all doing here? So we believe in that, and we're really excited to take some time to build this out. And we are partnering with Netcapital to hopefully, make some strides in this. And the first step is really just bringing this opportunity and the ability to raise money from the crowd and from anyone and everyone, in addition to traditional, investors that are accredited. So with that, again, anyone have any questions? Anyone have any thoughts? Please, add to the conversation. But Jaden, feel free to dive a little deeper on what Netcapital, where you sit in the market, and basically who it really is best for, kind of the stage of company, the stage of founder and team. What exactly is the experience about? So, let's not have that be a 5 to 10 minute presentation, but let's answer the first question of like, can you just dive into a little bit deeper on people that might not be familiar with Netcapital?
Yeah, I mean, to answer that question quickly is tough because, I mean, like right away, I can tell you the majority of companies that do this generally are pre-seed, seed stage companies doing their first or second rounds of financing. We have had plenty of companies raise through us that are a little bit later stage, Series A, Series B, etc. The reason I don't want to jump in and quickly answer that question in that way is because I genuinely believe that raising through a Reg CF securities offering, whether it's through Netcapital or another platform that does this, it's just the smartest thing for a company to do, whether they're raising their first round of financing, their second round, their third round, their fourth round, all the way up through when they're ready to go public. There's no stage of company where I can say it's best for seed stage companies, and here's why. And I think the reason for that is everyone thinks so. I mean, Reg CF obviously stands for regulation crowdfunding. Everyone hears crowdfunding and think that's really good for raising capital from a bunch of people. You might know them, you might not, customers, fans, etc., in really small increments. So people are investing $100 here, $300 here, maybe $700 here, lumping them all together and to make this like larger round of financing, or this like larger lump sum of cash. That's absolutely something you can do through a Reg CF offering. And there's, I mean, obviously tons of companies out there that are using Reg CF offerings to close a bunch of checks in really small increments. But even for companies that are raising through a more traditional strategy, like let's say I'm going out and raising 100 grand or 500 grand, and I'm going to close that 500 grand from 10 investors at 50K each. It's still smarter for a company to do it through a Reg CF offering on a platform like ours, because one, you just have a technology platform to make the investment process as easy as possible. You don't want to make more work for your investors. You don't want to have to require them to work with an attorney or sign a document here or fax this page here and then worry about a bank wire here. It's just all archaic and old fashioned. Like there's no need for it to be complicated. Let's just make it easy. Set them up on a platform. They can make their investment in 60 seconds or less and be done. So it's easier for the investor. It's easier for the company. From an equity structure standpoint, it's better for the company by far because Netcapital and our competitors, we package all of the investors that come through the platform into one line item on your cap table. So if you close that 500K from 10 investors at 50K each, rather than have 10 single line items running down your cap table, let's just keep things simple, make things logistically easier for you, and package those investors into one line item so it's logistically the same thing as dealing with a single investor being the platform. And then I think the bonus there too is like our platform, along with our competitors, we all have these wide networks of users and investors who are on the platforms that are going to see the deal and play a part. The more traction that a company provides, the more active our networks will be and the higher the conversion rate is. So if you set up on a platform, like let's say you set up on Netcapital and you close out those 10 investors at 50K each, that's 500K. But our network's going to see that and get really excited about it and want to get involved too. So you turn that 500K into maybe 750K because our network's going to want to get involved. So, I mean, those are just a few of the reasons, but I think I can go further. I think, so I know I'm going on a tangent again, but in short, I don't think there is a single stage of a company that this works best for. Right now, it's most commonly used in seed stage companies. But again, every single month we're seeing a tremendous growth in the amount of dollars that are being raised through these offerings and the amount of companies that are participating. and it's getting to the point where it's just a more mainstream way to raise capital, and it's on everyone's radar. And if a company is not doing it, I'm sure they've probably considered it in the past or are seriously considering it now.
Yeah. And I've are you, Jaden, are you familiar with Gumroad? And did you hear about his story?
Yeah, so I actually know Sahil a little bit. We've talked a number of times. It was really interesting because he was the first one to do rolling funds. Rolling funds are like this new type of way to raise like a venture fund or an angel fund through AngelList, and it uses some of the same regulations that Reg CF uses, just like the ability to generally solicit. And so he made waves when he came out with his rolling fund, and when we were talking, he was so excited to do this because rolling funds annoyed a lot of venture capitalists because it starts to take power away from the people who have been hoarding the power for so long. And we were talking like him doing the Reg CF, raising $5 million from any old person. It's a lot more like, okay, like venture capital, step aside. You're becoming a little bit old fashioned and sort of a way of the past. Like, it's not fair for you to take so much control away from these founders. There's other ways to do this that are just more efficient and more founder friendly. And so, yeah, it was cool. He raised the full 5 million in a day. I knew he was going to do it. I'm super happy about that.
Yeah. So I shared it in the chat for everyone. I bring it up because I want to illustrate the potential and kind of the truth of what could happen, but also a caution that, if you read that article, which I actually haven't yet, I was kind of looking that up, but I'm pretty sure that they detail the fact that Gumroad has been around for about 10 years, if not 8 to 10 years. They have a significant reach in community. Okay. And so one way to think about this, and this is not a negative for anyone thinking about this, but just be aware that clearly a company that has a larger network and a larger reach and a larger community of fans, if you will, or customers, when they do attempt or put together something like a community raise, it's gonna be probably more impactful. And he raised literally $5 million in about a day, and that was because he's got 8-year-long relationships, 6-year-long relationships with either people, customers, whatnot. Pretty heavily followed on Twitter as well. So he put out a tweet and it went pretty quickly. But on the plus side, there's clearly what he's done is said, no, there's another way to raise money. And I want to raise money from the people that care about this brand and company and myself as an entrepreneur. And, rather than going and pitching 100 VCs and getting told no, he just sees another direction in the market to actually bring the upside to the people that have been with him in the company for years and years and years and years that actually care about it. And they're putting in, $500 or $1,000 each, that sort of thing. Okay. So read the article. It's clearly illustrating what's the potential here. Most of us on the call probably aren't in that position, and that's okay. But just know that that a lot of this Reg CF, it's not just like listing on Netcapital and the money will fall down and rain from the ceiling because you list on this platform. There is aspects of reaching out to the community. Actually having a community of some sort is going to be a pretty strong prerequisite, not 100% prerequisite, but starting from ground zero, thinking that random crowd around the world is just going to give you money is not the right way to approach this. What I want to do is come back to that thought, but I want to bring in Stephanie, just because we're going to kind of bounce around and just have a conversation here. Stephanie, you do have a question around, your timing as you're looking at an angel round. So come on in here and give some perspective. And basically anyone in here, also, if you have a thought based on Stephanie's situation, please jump in and give some thoughts. But Stephanie, I want you to actually, come in here.
Oh yeah, I have a situation, all right, but it's kind of a good problem to have, but I'm a little overwhelmed if I'm being completely honest. I was introduced recently, about a month ago, to my friend, Danielle Braga. She's the CEO of Define Crowd here in Seattle. She introduced me to the director of her board. He leads up Swan Network. It's an angel investor network. I'm also dialed into Sony, Zash Media, and Zones Technology, the third largest digital satellite mapping company behind Google Maps and Waze. So my question is for you, Jaden, because you said about consolidating, bringing all the investors into kind of like one pipe to manage. What kind of conversations should I be having? You probably say, no, don't have any conversations with them directly. I don't know. But he asked some questions to me and I'm not sure how to answer. I tend to be more of a questions girl. I volley with more questions back rather than just give them an answer. Jim Reed with the Swan Network, his questions for me were, what's your valuation? Can this go global? What's the rounds? It is $250K for my first phase. I have a design engineering firm. My advising CTO break it down into sprints. So, I mean, I have it all down, maybe not a formal business plan, but I do have the slide deck, everything ready to go. How would Netcapital manage these people? Do you do a combination of working with VCs and angels? He did ask the pointed question, do you want to go angel or VC? Definitely angel. And do you have like a argument for or against someone like me, maybe just putting 20K of my own money and hiring some friends I know through some design firms here, get some guys out of Ukraine to build some working prototype, maybe to save my IP? Like, what have you seen out there and what would you recommend for someone like me? Because I'm getting a lot of interest, but I'm also getting very overwhelmed very quickly.
Yeah, good question. There's a lot there. So just working backwards, like regarding like putting in 20K of your own money to hire some people, etc. If you ask that question to like 10 different people, you'd probably get 10 different answers. I err on the side of not doing that. And the reason is, as a founder, you're already putting so much forward. You're like spending your time, and all of your focus and attention is presumably already set and singled in on the company. I think there's already so much at risk for you. There's already so much that you're putting forward. And I would generally advise someone to not self-finance a company more than they absolutely need to. It's different if it's like, a few $1,000s just to like form an LLC or a C Corp and get some marketing materials put together, maybe build a very, very simple version of a prototype or get a logo done or something. I don't know. Pitch deck design, whatever it is. When you start getting into like tens or $20,000, I think if you can raise capital, then raise capital. It's just general. If you're serious about the company, then raising capital shouldn't be a question of like whether you should or shouldn't. And yeah, I think if you can, I would just always recommend to go that route. As far as like the valuation goes, so the way it works at Netcapital is you actually will, when you list, the valuation that you set or list at is completely up to you. So you'll have the final say. If you want to start raising at a $5 million valuation, you can do that. If you want to start raising at a $10 million valuation, you can do that. A lot of companies, obviously being early stage, come to us and aren't quite sure what their valuation should look like or what a proper valuation would be. So for companies that need a little bit of help, we'll usually just set them up with our director of business development, who's been in the space of venture capital for over a decade now, and was an associate with Techstars and has worked with countless numbers of startups. And so he usually will help advise companies and figure out what a good valuation might look like. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you what you list your company at in terms of the price. And then, yeah, so you were asking about like angels versus, or like angels and individuals versus like VCs or institutions. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but like I definitely always would prefer to raise or work with individuals and angels. I mean, institutional capital is just so, it's gotten to a point where it's in so many instances now, it's just so toxic and not founder friendly. I mean, usually they're penny pinching, they're taking a way bigger chunk of the company than realistically they should be, or angels would request. A lot of the times they're playing dirty tricks and taking operational control away from founders. It's just like, it's not a good way to raise capital, in my opinion. I think it's different for companies that are like Series B, Series C, raising, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars and getting closer to a point where they're going to go public or something like that. I mean, I think that's a completely different story. But for an early stage company, there's just so many different alternatives to institutional capital that it's very, very rare that I would err on the side of going an institutional route, unless maybe like you're a really well-known startup and everyone's trying to get involved and you have all of the leverage. But when you don't have the leverage, I think that's when it's important to sort of stay away from institutions if you can. And so, yeah, that being said, I think Netcapital is the smartest way to close checks and close investments from any individual or angel. Generally, institutions or venture firms won't make their investments through a platform like ours, but with angels and individuals, it's a lot different. And I mean, our platform is built to be optimized for them.
One last question. Do you help streamline communications? Like say if $50,000 from each individual and I need 250K, that's like, 5 people that I potentially answer to. Is there a way that you guys help streamline like the communication between us? Is there like kind of a Sadie Hawkins dance where I invite them? I see if they're fit. They see if I'm a fit. You know what I mean? Like, is there kind of some way to streamline that process? And maybe it's a silly question, but I don't really know.
Yeah, no, it's not a silly question. I just want to make sure I understand the question. So are you asking like if Netcapital will like basically put you in meetings with investors or like do investor matchmaking, or is it more along the lines of like when you're ready to close checks, how do you communicate with your investors on an ongoing basis?
Both. Let's do both. I think it'll help everybody here.
Sure. So,
help me, so.
Yeah. So to be clear, no, Netcapital will not do investor matchmaking, anything like that. I mean, our role and value proposition or value add as a company is to provide entrepreneurs with the technology and the platform and the software to raise capital in a way that they've never been able to before. We're really just a software provider. We do have, like I mentioned earlier, we do have a wide network of users and investors on the site who are going to see your deal and likely play a part and contribute to the round. But I mean, you should sort of think of the additional capital that comes from our network as sort of like a bonus to the capital that you're actually raising yourself. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like staying in touch with investors post raising, like through our platform, there's like a communications tool where you can update your investors and stay in touch with everyone and make sure that everyone's just always brought up to speed on the current state of the company. If you had already been having conversations with someone offline and are just using Netcapital to be like the sort of like the checkout system to actually close the investment, I mean, it would be likely that you continue to communicate with them offline how you normally would, and then just use Netcapital as the way to process the investment and make everything.
I'm talking to someone, I can kind of use you guys as the go-between broker and being like, this is how I officially accept,
yeah, like if it, like, let's say I was an investor and we had just met at a networking event or something. We were talking about your company, and I think it's really cool and want to invest $5,000. You can just say, okay, awesome. Here's the link to my Netcapital offering page if you'd like to invest. Like when I'm actually ready to send the money, I can go to Netcapital in 60 seconds, make my investment, and then continue to obviously communicate with you offline. But yeah, and then Netcapital, like our communications tool is just a good way to, like, in one place, just everyone that invests through Netcapital, you can just easily keep them all updated in one motion.
Awesome.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Stephanie, I will just add a little bit of thoughts. Good question. And, you know, I am sensing that this would be like your first raise. Is that true? Like first within this company, if not first raise as a founder?
As a founder in tech, at 25, I raised $350K for a film project, but that was another life. So I'm used to raising, I'm used to running teams.
Yeah.
Tech realm, I'm a multi-hyphenate. So no one thought I could do this. I do UX design. I'm not a programmer traditionally, but I know what good looks like. And I know the programming technologies I need to run this. So yeah, this is my first time. Let's just say it's my first time because it is my first tech build.
Sure. Awesome. Well, that's good. That's what Founders Live is here for. Yeah, I would, my high level thoughts, and, again, preface it by, I'm a founder and entrepreneur, not an investor yet, really. But, what you want to think about is a few things. And the way I view raising money as a startup is it's essentially, on a high level, you want to look at the power dynamic. Okay. And initially, everything sets, I guess, just starting out, typically power dynamic is like he or she who has the money is up here and they're like, I've got the money. And, the startup down here is like, give me the money. And you don't necessarily want to feel like you're there, right? So the power dynamic is really around creating something that is attractive and something that's gaining momentum. And investors are like, whoa, what's that? And if they understand that this something is actually building in value, and there's an opportunity to maybe invest in this entity, in this company, you now, as you mentioned the Sadie Hawkins dance, you become the better looking man or woman at the dance that they want to be with, right? And so the power dynamic starts to shift. And the goal of any early stage growing startup is to have something that's attractive, that starts to pull investors in with interest, and hopefully they're at a place where they would like to participate or actually, be involved, right? So I think that's number one thought, which is and I'm now speaking as a founder, and just where are we in that spectrum of, do we have something that is gaining traction in the market, attention? Are we becoming more attractive? And how does that place us in the power dynamic to then attract capital? Because if you're down here, it's almost not worth your time and effort until you get your job here is to build that attractiveness and that attention. It's very difficult to raise money if you're not in that position. Maybe if you have existing relationships with people that like you and like the concept, and it's just like that would work.
I know we have like a marketing sheet, like Aaron Brockovich, Lou Waters, Billy Martin, the lead showrunner of Real Time with Bill Maher. Yeah. We have like a whole coalition for the cause of what this is. I mean, because what this is creating a community in analyzing social trends that's aligned with keywords in news. So if you ever download Haystack Media for your TV, you know what I'm talking about. It's in demand, in real time, on call, hashtag keywords, and you can scour all of international news at your fingertips on your smart TV. We're taking that concept and bringing it to the web, and creating these kind of sub headlines around like pop-up surveys, like Hashtag COVID-19 vaccine. What do you feel about Johnson & Johnson going away? Great example, relevant. I just got the vaccine. I was a little terrified when I found out that it was being recalled. And then I looked at the CDC site and they said, well, there's blood clots amongst all the vaccines. And it's kind of like you're more likely to get hit by a car. We want to create kind of a containerized community where we have a survey pop up under hashtag COVID-19 vaccine. And then we have an informed community with some educators involved, like Aaron Brockovich, if it's hashtag water sustainability. And then essentially just create news for the people, by the people, that bends the media's ear and create new compelling headlines that ask the questions or answers the questions, a little bit of both, that no one's talking about in mainstream news. So that's my idea. We have journalists on both sides of the aisle interested in this, along with key educators. So it's not about lack of traction. It's about me trying to protect my baby and finding the right investor. I'm a picky bitch, guys. So that's the short, excuse my French, but I know I have something. I want the right investor fit. And maybe that's my problem, is that I'm a little timid to go to the dance now because I have investor interest. I just want to safeguard myself more. And I think Netcapital could be a piece in that. You know, I already have this platform set up. This is the bat signal beacon you come to. I already did my due diligence in filling out Netcapital's forms. I looked at that and everything. I feel like it's another way to kind of just professionally put a face to this, even though I have a really good slide deck. I don't know. I'm just talking out loud because I don't know what I don't know. My first tech build.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I mean, it's, rather than, I mean, I think we could probably spend an hour and a half to 2 hours here, and maybe we will later. But I think, like, in general, you know, your question on, you know, should I put like essentially like a lot of my money into it? You know, I think you're going to hear, I think that what Jaden said was pretty kind of at least spot on, in the sense of you're probably going to hear 10 different answers on that. But what you want to do is, you know, I also wouldn't suggest, like, you know, for a negative detriment to your life, just doing that to then be like, oh shoot, like that's not good for me personally or financially. But you're going to get the question, are you full in? And, you know, they might ask, like, how much have you put in personally? And that your answer is the right answer, whatever it is. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because no one should be telling you what you should do personally and financially. But the question to yourself is, how much does this mean to me? And where am I at personally? How do I want to go about this? And, you know, time, effort, financial effort, and where am I at, right? And so you just want to consider that. But I know that Gary's sitting there, he's got a question and he's probably chomping at the bit to ask it. And maybe he has some thoughts on this too, but I want to bring Gary in. But Stephanie, I think the idea sounds really interesting and great. And you're asking the right questions. And it sounds like you continually ask questions. So keep asking questions, because those will continually bring you insights. Yeah. Good. Gary.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, Stephanie, what they said. I really love, first of all, having invested a good chunk of my own money in my startup, and then also having a current client that has invested, you know, a lot more than 20, but in that ballpark. They found out the hard way that, like, oh, going and getting a product built somewhere didn't mean that was like, now you've got to build on rocky foundation instead of something really solid. So just really consider how you're going to spend that, because you might spend it better in design, in concept, than actually building a product. You know, I'll just leave it at that. And there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about there.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jaden, the question I've got for you, first of all, I love this. This wasn't available when I first started my startup. And this is, first of all, at what level can a startup come in? Like, do they have to have some traction? Do they have to have, you know, more than a pitch deck? Do they, you know, what is it that is a minimum requirement? And then also on the second part of that question would be, what kind of vetting or what kind of assurances do you have for somebody being on the platform, as far as if I'm an investor and put in $1,000 bucks?
Yeah, really good question. So I think in both pieces to that question, Netcapital takes, I guess, a more liberal approach. So we're really trying to democratize access to private capital markets, not just for prospective investors, but also for the entrepreneur too. We want to give everyone the ability to raise capital. And so some of our competitors will have some requirements, like they might require you to be post revenue generating, or just require you to have like a little bit more traction to actually be allowed to raise with them. They'll also play more of like a venture capitalist role, like sitting there kind of judging your idea and the market and the opportunity, et cetera, and whether or not it's potentially a good investment. I think in both scenarios, I think that's kind of counterproductive and in a way defeats the purpose of why we're all presumably doing this. And so at Netcapital, you don't have to have any traction. I mean, you do, in order to legally sell securities, you do need to be formed as an LLC or a C Corp. But as long as you've legally formed the company at the time of, like, we obviously have to make sure that's a thing when we go ahead and list you, or engage with you, I should say. But other than that, yeah, you don't need to have any traction. We've done work with like literally companies that were no more than an idea. This was before I got involved with Netcapital, but a few years ago, there was just 2 students out of MIT that knew one of the employees here at Netcapital. Were in Boston too. And they just literally had an idea and didn't know where to start and needed capital to get it off the ground. And they raised on Netcapital, raised like $50K from friends and family, and were able to take it to the next level. So, I mean, I just think that's so cool. And then in terms of like what due diligence we do, again, like we're not going to sit here playing venture capitalist and decide whether or not we like your idea or not. The only due diligence we do is, one, we need to make sure that we can legally work with you. So you can't be like, there's certain types of companies that we're not legally allowed to work with. For example, like financial institutions or gambling companies. There's just like a couple of firearms. There's a couple of weird or certain types of companies that we can't work with. And then we need to make sure that the company at least has a US based entity. They don't need to be headquartered or primarily based out of the United States. They just need to have a US entity to act as the investment vehicle. Investors can come from all over the world, but the vehicle in which the company raises capital through needs to be based in the US. And we also need to have some sort of reason to believe that you can actually like successfully raise capital. We don't want a company to come on and like not be able to raise even like a minimum of like 10 grand. If it's very clear to us that like a company just isn't quite ready, maybe it's because they just don't have an understanding of how this all works, or for whatever the reason is, we need to be comfortable with their ability to raise capital. And most people we are, but there's some certain instances where we just need to be a little careful. But other than that, yeah, that's really all we do. So no traction, and we need to make sure we can legally work with you, and we need to believe that you can successfully raise capital.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. That really answered a lot of my questions. So basically, don't come in here with the Nick Hughes fan club idea. That wouldn't be a place that would go get raised money, but any legal entity or something that comes along, and I don't have to be concerned about whether I have a product in existence yet.
Correct.
As long as I can communicate what it is that we've got.
Correct. And also, to be clear, like obviously the company needs to be legally formed for the listing to actually happen, just because that's for obvious reasons a requirement. But we've actually there's been companies that have come to us before that haven't even had an LLC or a C Corp set up. So, I mean, we just direct them to the place that, like, if some people just don't know how to do that, and we can just say, like, okay, like, use Stripe Atlas, it's $500, you can set up your C Corp and you're good to go. So yeah, I mean, we have started talking to companies even before they've been legally formed.
Great.
All right. Any other questions? If you're all thinking something, or you might be in the middle of a raise, and this can be associated with Netcapital or not, but we have about a little less than 15 minutes here. Want to give you a chance to ask a question or have a comment. Whether this is exactly the right place to say it, I can tell you that Founders Live is looking this direction. Jaden, we've had some conversations, and if I could paint the ideal future picture, we will and would like to, as a part of a raise, have our global community and people that are around Founders Live have a chance to participate. So we are looking in this direction, and it's just a matter of timing and a matter of how things are lining up. Things are looking really good for Founders Live. We're rolling out some really cool stuff here, and I actually think it could be in the next 3-6 months. So if not sooner, but I just want everyone to know here that, for Founders Live, the way that I'm looking at it is, and Jaden and I have talked about this, which is like, look, it's not 100% crowdfunding or 100% traditional accredited investors anymore. What Jaden is saying when he says this is probably the best thing to do is, depending on the nature of the business and depending on the nature of, essentially, do you have a network of 100 people or 50 or 100,000? I think the 50 or 100,000, it makes a ton of sense. If you have a fan base and you have a customer base and you want to open it up for them to be a part of it, it makes a lot of sense. So we're looking at this and saying, we got a global reach and a global community, and it's absolutely dang right that I would love to have people that have been around with us for 6-7 years to, if they choose to, participate, be an investor, and actually see this ride, take the ride with us and have that upside. So we're strongly looking at it. It's just a matter of the timing of everything. Yeah. So
yeah, I think I'm excited for you guys to do that, Nick. I know we've spoken about it for quite some time, but I think it'll be awesome for you guys, and I'm really looking forward to see that come to fruition.
Yeah. So anyone else thoughts, questions? It's kind of an open room here. I know I see Ceci there. I'm gonna call her out real quick and just say hi. And if you're, how you doing?
Nick. I'm good. Sorry, let me turn my camera on so as not to be. Although it doesn't seem to be.
It's okay. Just calling you out. How are you doing? You're still in Portland and everything's going well?
Yes. Yeah, everything's going well. This has been great. Thank you, Jaden. We are getting ready to start raising around. It's really intimidating. This is actually Aaron's here too, and Tim. This is our second fundraising webinar session this morning. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're right in it. Yeah. I think, all I'm gonna say is, yes, we acknowledge. I mean, it is intimidating, and it feels like it. What's so strange about the whole thing for everyone? It's like, look, we're entrepreneurs. We're founders. We have most of the time, it's our interest, passion, and expertise in this area. And then when it's time to raise money, you're basically talking with these experts in this specific area where this is their life and this is what they do all the time. And we don't know the rules. The power dynamic again is just different. Right. But what I would suggest is going back to and this is kind of where I'm at, is in the end, you are the founder and you're the entrepreneur. They are looking for equity in your company.
Right.
And so it's about us. It's about us. It's about what we're doing. And you're at you as the founder or CEO or leadership team should be saying, why do we want you involved in our company? So you need to like pitch me, you know, and I know that feels weird, but if you can do it correctly.
Yeah, it's sort of that up and down. Like there are days when I feel that way. I mean, one of the things that's really attractive about something like Netcapital is that none of the three of us are MBAs. And so we sort of have this gap, right? Like we know what we're going to do with that money. Like we know our market, we know our customer, we know what we're building. We can't build it ourselves. We've got a developer now. But this financial piece is, not my area. And I feel, and we have a huge obligation to the people who invest in our company, especially if it's going to be our friends and family. And protecting ourselves and all the stuff that goes into that. So there's this area like, right, oh, we need this big influx of cash. We know what we're going to do with that cash, and we have a vision for what this will become. But we've got to manage that capital. We've got to protect ourselves and our equity, and then we have to make sure that we use that capital to get us to the next thing. And that's the area that's like super intimidating. Like, I'll wake up one day and go like, all we need is this $750,000. And then I'm like, oh my God, if we had the $750,000, like now the pressure is on for sure.
Oh yeah.
So
welcome to the roller coaster. But look, I will just do a plug for another another partner of ours, and you might be familiar with them already, but Now CFO. And we work as Founders Live, we're strong partners with them in terms of some of our cities, as well as I have one of their partners is very, we meet every 2 weeks, and they are that kind of intermediate CFO place, and that is exactly what we need right now too. And so I can tell you that the hesitation, or like the aspect of how would we handle that, what would we do, they are great, or an entity service similar to Now CFO is great to come in to help you manage that and say, all right, let's get this all in line. Let's understand, if you're going to raise 750, what is the allocation of it? What's the use of proceeds? And then they also have done a great job to help me and Founders Live with also just putting together a little more of they call it like the 13-week cash flow dashboard and viewpoint. And it's actually a running essentially 13 weeks. So a running quarterly view on your, cash flows projected or estimated, but also pulled from 13, weeks behind. And so now you can start getting better grips on the view of your business, and being able to use that now to then, as you go to raise money, and then, these individuals and consultants at some point you'd like hire on someone on an hourly or even a monthly rate. They help you have a better grip on the financial aspect of everything. So I would also encourage.
Thanks for reminding me about that resource, because I sort of like, it was sort of on my radar for a little while, and then with the million things that are,
I know we got
on
everything
our way.
I'm in the same boat. Awesome. Well, hey, we have about 5 minutes left. I do want to just offer anyone else, feel free to jump in. We can hang out here until the end of the hour, but Jaden, any last thoughts on this?
I don't know. I think Well, Cece, just to follow on to what you said, it was interesting to hear about how, like, you talked about how, like, this process is quite a bit intimidating, and I think that really touches on a large part of the inspiration for Netcapital being built in the first place. Like, the backstory to it, basically our founder and our CEO, when he was like kind of figuring out what he wanted to do with his life, he decided he wanted to get into venture capital, and one of his best friends at the time was building this mobile games company, and he was like, well, how are you going to get into venture capital? Like, where is the money going to come from? And our CEO was like, well, I don't know, I haven't really gotten there yet. So the founder of the games company was like, all right, well, we're raising capital. How about you just come and help us raise capital right now, and kind of get your foot in the door and, like, understand how venture capital works, et cetera. And you can then, like, go from there. And so he did it. And he didn't know it at the time, but the father of that kid ended up being the founding CEO of Napster. I don't know how familiar all of you guys are with Napster. Really big deal. #1 internet company of the year 2000. It carried a lot of weight to its name. And so he realized, like, he was going, like, around Boston having these meetings with venture capitalists, and like, these were two white kids, Jewish, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, raising capital, and the father of the founder was the founding CEO of Napster. People were just writing in checks left and right, and Jason, our founder, when he was doing this, he didn't even know what was going on. He was just, like, knocking on doors, and people were just, like, throwing them money, and it was like, just, it seemed so, like, just so absurd to him and ridiculous. And he was thinking, like, if he was just coming into this situation from, like, an entirely different perspective as, like, a Black female founder or something like that, or, like, if he just wasn't put in the situation that he was in, like, he would have no idea where to start. And so he felt like, even though his perspective was, I guess, coming from a more positive angle, like, they were actually raising capital, it was still very intimidating to him, and the whole space just seemed like a black box with no structure to it. And so part of the inspiration behind building Netcapital was to, like, remove the intimidations around how companies raise capital, and to allow companies to, like, don't worry about compliance, don't worry about legal, don't worry about where the money goes or what papers to sign and all of this extra stuff. Like, now all you have to worry about is who you're talking to and getting them excited about the company. And well, so, like, you still have to raise the capital.
That's super, I mean, gosh, if I could just focus on that and not worry about, like, all the legal, all the legal ramifications and all of that. How do we get in touch with you, JD? That's what
and I can put my email in the chat here. Feel free to email me at any time. If you guys ever have any questions, I'm always happy to help. If you ever want to hop on a call, I'd be happy to do it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, this has been good. Thank you, Jaden. And anyone that needs to get that email, grab it soon, because I'm going to shut this down here in a few minutes. I don't know about y'all, but I got to jump on another call at the beginning of the hour, and that's the way it is with Zoom. So awesome. Thank you. Good to see you, Ken, and everyone on this call. We do this periodically, and then also we have a pretty cool Founders Live conversations happening tomorrow. I will let's see. I'm just going to share one more link with y'all. And tomorrow we have a conversations happening, and this is a little more like, really around, really like living with integrity for success, and just dealing with the ups and downs and shifts in life to reorient ourselves. So Thane's going to have a really great conversation. He'll do a little bit of a presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A too. That's tomorrow. So if you're around, hey, come join us. And if not, but good to see you, and thank you all. Gotta go. All right.
Cool.